The fight is on in Kobani, where competing claims of progress are shrouded in smoke. New amateur video appears to show Kurdish and Free Syrian Army fighters engaging Islamic State militants. The fighters say they pushed IS out of the area overnight and even took control of a major highway connecting Aleppo with Kobani, a claim denied by IS militants. The militants have been trying to take Kobani since September. The group's surge in the region prompted the U.S. to join the fight, launching airstrikes to help Kurdish forces. U.S. officials say coalition forces carried out 5 strikes on Wednesday, but with competing claims on the ground, there's no telling who's winning the battle for Kobani.
الضربات الجوية التي نفذتها قوات التحالف الدولي في العراق ضد تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية قد تبدو في الساعات الأخيرة الأكثر إيلاما للتنظيم. أكثر من 30 مسلحا تابعين له قتلوا في غارة جوية على جنوب غربي كركوك، وبالتحديد قرب بلدة منزلة التابعة لقضاء الحويجة. وأفيد أن من بين القتلى والي التنظيم في قضاء الحويجة والمكنى بأبو الحسن. مصادر إعلامية عراقية قالت أيضا إن واليا آخر من تنظيم الدولة قتل في غارة مماثلة وقعت غربية محافظة نينوى، وقيل إن اسمه نشوان نايف الخاتوني. وسائل إعلام عراقية تحدثت من جهتها عن أن قوات مشتركة من الجيش العراقي والحشد الشعبي مدعومة من رجال العشائر بدأوا هجوما لاستعادة السيطرة على قضاء هيت، وأشارت إلى أنهم استعادوا مناطق عدة في القضاء ومنها منطقة الدولاب غربي الأنبار. وفي الوقت الذي عرضت فيه التلفزة العراقية مشاهد قالت إنها تظهر استعادة قرى عدة في السعدية والطريق المؤدي إلى بعقوبة، أفادت مصادر أمنية عراقية أن عددا من مسلحي الحشد الشعبي الموالين للحكومة قتلوا في مواجهات عنيفة وقعت بينهم وبين مقاتلي تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية قرب بلدة الإسحاق جنوب محافظة صلاح الدين. كما أفادت هذه المصادر عن مقتل عدد آخر من أفراد القوات الأمنية العراقية والحشد الشعبي في تفجير انتحاري بسيارة ملغمة شمالية بغداد.
هو ليس إلا الحنين إلى الأيام الأولى من الثورة السورية وأغانيها الذي يجمع هؤلاء الناشطين في أول منتدى ثقافي من نوعه في حلب اختاروا له من الأسماء جدل. هنا يقرأ الشعر وتسمع الموسيقى في فضاء حيوي يجمع في الداخل السوري كل تناقضات الثورة السورية والخلاف حولها والاختلاف فيها.
المنتدى بيضم مكتبة ثقافية متنوعة من جميع الأطياف وجميع التيارات الفكرية والسياسية، وبيضم عدة أمور ثانية، في مثلا في عنا عروض سينمائية إن شاء الله راح تكون، في ندوات حوارية.
ما يميز زمان هذا المنتدى ومكانه هو تحدي الموت الذي تحمله البراميل المتفجرة والتشوهات والانحرافات التي يقول الناشطون إن ثورتهم ابتليت بكثير منها. ولعل زخم التحدي هذا ودلالاته هو ما ميز الثورة السورية عن ثورات الربيع العربي الأخرى حسب ما يقول هؤلاء الناشطون.
نهار 24 الظهر تحولت من عند حاجز الجيش.
هذا المنتدى بدأ حلما ثم صار دعوة في مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي بعنوان بادر ولو بكتاب، فشهد إقبالا لافتا يشبه مسار الثورة ذاتها وتعطش ناشطيها إلى استعادة هويتهم الوطنية والإنسانية من خلال الثقافة وفوهة البندقية على حد سواء دون انفصام بينهما.
الحراك الثقافي هو حراك كثير هام وكثير مغيب في ظل الثوره السوريه، فسمعت بحمله بادر ولو بكتاب. كان الهدف انه انا اجيب الكتب اللي عندي مع تواصل اكثر قدر من الاشخاص اللي بعرف ممكن عندهم كتب ونجيبها لحتى نغني الصاله الثقافيه كاول تجربه ثقافيه في المناطق المحرره.
في هذا المكان تنكسر الحدود بين الذاكره والمتخيل، هي فسحه بين ازيز الرصاص والبرميل المتفجر. تسمع فيها الشاعر الفلسطيني محمود درويش يصدح: وأنت تخوض حروبك فكر بغيرك، لا تنسى من يطلبون السلام.
We're holding our positions on the front in Dabag and Itimalat so that Islamic State group militants don't enter Marea. We are on the lookout 24 hours a day. They tried several times to infiltrate, but thank God we were able to repel their attacks each time, and they sustained a lot of losses.
IS fired many shells on our positions, but thank God they didn't explode and we were able to dismantle them and get rid of them.
These are the remnants of an IS shell. We will remain strong in our resistance until we get rid of them completely.
The Syrian military has always had an advantage because it controls the skies, and as of late, the government has sharply increased its air attacks. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says it has documented almost 1,600 hits in rebel-held areas in the past months alone. Some 400 civilians were killed. Some say this could be part of a strategy to get rid of whatever is left of the so-called moderate rebels, while the international community focuses on fighting the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant.
The regime is pointing its weapons at the opposition. The international coalition is focusing on ISIL. So indirectly, the coalition is doing a favor for the regime, since it has less enemies to deal with, and it can freely target the moderates.
And it has. The government seems to want to eliminate them so the international community won't have partners on the ground. Syria's Al-Qaeda branch seems to have the same strategy. Earlier this month, al-Nusra Front forced the rebels out of their bases in Idlib province. In other areas, car bombings and improvised explosive devices are being used against those groups allied to the U.S.
The opposition is growing increasingly frustrated. It wants the United States to review its policy. For the rebels, it's not enough to fight ISIL. They want the coalition to target the government as well.
It is not just that. Some people say the strategy is helping the government on the ground.
We have directly helped the Assad regime by hitting Islamic State targets in eastern Syria that were fighting not Iraqis. These Islamic State units were not fighting the moderate opposition. They were fighting the Assad regime.
As part of the strategy, the U.S. plans to train and equip a rebel force. Officials are hoping it would serve as a counterweight to ISIL and a negotiating card with the government. But the opposition wants this strategy to change. It wants better weapons to topple and not talk to the government. Zana Khuder, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
بحفاوة استقبل رئيس الوزراء العراقي نظيره التركي أحمد داوود أغلو. رحب حيدر العبادي بالموقف التركي الداعم للعراق الذي يواجه خطر الإرهاب كما يقول.
ونحن نرحب بهذا الموقف التركي اللي وقف مع العراق، وتركيا بلد جار للعراق ونحن حريصون على هذه العلاقة وأن تستمر. نحن في العراق نواجه خطر إرهابي لوجودنا.
من جهة أخرى أكد رئيس الوزراء التركي أن خطر تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية يشمل تركيا أيضا، وبحسب الجانب العراقي فإن تركيا عرضت التعاون في عدة مجالات منها العسكري والأمني.
كل ما يهدد العراق يشكل تهديدا لتركيا وللمنطقة على حد سواء، وعلى هذا الأساس أظهرنا دقة كبيرة في التعاون مع العراق ومع المجتمع الدولي مقابل الهجمات التي يقوم بها تنظيم الدولة.
بالنسبة إلى العراق فإن العلاقة الإيجابية مع تركيا قد تحدث فارقا لدى شريحة واسعة من العراقيين الذين يعول عليهم في طرد تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية من المناطق التي سيطر عليها. بموازاة الخطوات السياسية يبدو أن العراق يستعد لمرحلة جديدة في الصراع مع تنظيم الدولة، ففي محافظة الأنبار فتحت معسكرات لتدريب المتطوعين. هؤلاء ليسوا قوات حشد شيعية بل متطوعون من أبناء العشائر السنية، وهي خطوة مهمة في استراتيجية التحالف الدولي لمواجهة تنظيم الدولة. في هذه الأثناء تستمر المواجهات بين القوات الحكومية وقوات البيشمركة الكردية من جهة وتنظيم الدولة الإسلامية من جهة أخرى في عدة جبهات. في ناحية السعدية شمال شرقي محافظة ديالى مواجهات لم تحسم بعد بين البيشمركة وتنظيم الدولة الذي لا يزال يسيطر على المنطقة.
You're going to start to see the initial elements of the 1,500 or so additional start to flow in the next few weeks. So it won't be, this won't be something that, this temporary solution that he's come up with isn't going to be for very long. We're also seeing contributions being offered by coalition nations. And I can't speak for those specifically because we want those countries to speak for themselves in terms of what they're going to contribute. But we have secured numerous pledges from coalition partners to contribute trainers to this effort, and they will start to announce and then flow their troops in the next couple of months. I think certainly by the end of the calendar year, you're going to see a much more robust presence, not just by the United States doing this, but by coalition partners as well. And then it'll go.
لا تزال بلدة ربيعة وقد خلت من سكانها تحت سيطرة قوات البيشمركة، وذلك واقع يسعى تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية إلى تغييره بمحاولة استعادة السيطرة على المدينة.
لقد شنوا هجوما كبيرا، لكننا تمكنا من صدهم ودفعهم باتجاه شرق البلدة، وسيطرنا على المزيد من المواقع بعد أن كبدناهم خسائر فادحة. ربيعة مهمة جدا، فهي حلقة الوصل بين بلدتي زمار وسنجار، والتي بات أمر إعادة السيطرة عليها أسهل الآن.
يدرك مقاتلو تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية فداحة الضرر الذي يمثله فقدان السيطرة على ربيعة التي قطع معبرها الحدودي مع سوريا خاصرة أراضي التنظيم بين الدولتين.
فقدان ربيعة قسم ظهر الدولة الإسلامية، فهي بلدة مهمة للانطلاق تجاه الأراضي السورية، وهي مهمة لنا للحفاظ على أمن المنطقة ابتداء من مدينة زاخو وصولا إلى سنجار، إضافة إلى معبرها الدولي الذي كان سيسمح لتنظيم الدولة بالتوسع وربط مناطق نفوذه حتى بلدة القائم في الأنبار.
المعطيات على الأرض تشير إلى أن قوات البيشمركة لا تفكر في التراجع عن ربيعة، بل إنها بدأت بإصلاح الطرق التي دمرتها الحرب باتجاه مدينة سنجار التي لا يزال مقاتلو تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية يحكمون سيطرتهم عليها. قوات البيشمركة التي تحظى بغطاء جوي دولي لا تزال صامدة في ربيعة، لكنها ليست بعيدة عن مقاتلين لا يريدون التسليم حتى الآن لحقيقة أنهم فقدوها وأنزلت أعلامهم السوداء من على مبانيها. أمير فندي، الجزيرة، بلدة ربيعة، غربي نينوى.
It is now the deepest and worst refugee crisis that we've seen in a generation. It's the largest number of refugees that we've seen anywhere in the world for the last 40 years. 3.2 million people forced to leave their homes, leave their country to seek safety in neighbouring countries. We uncovered a wealth of evidence of people attempting to enter Turkey irregularly, people being beaten by Turkish border guards when they attempt to enter, especially single men. Also received reports of 17 separate incidents where people have been shot dead by Turkish border guards between December last year and August this year.
Some things people understand about life for refugees in northern France. It's well known, for example, that there's a huge camp known as the Jungle near the port of Calais, just over the sea from Britain. Equally, many people know that desperate migrants dodge the French police, trying to find their way into moving vehicles on their way to England. And that even if most fail, the growing perception is that Britain is being swamped by unwanted immigration. But this is a new development. We drove for nearly an hour south of Calais into the middle of the countryside, nowhere near a motorway or a railway line. And here, wedged between farmers' fields, the evidence of how far the lives of refugees are sinking. These young boys said they'd all come from different parts of Syria. They're all alone and barely had a piece of bread to share between them. They looked absolutely lost. This boy said his parents were both dead and that he'd been here for 4 months. We were smuggled through Turkey, he said. I've lost all my papers. Nobody's interested in helping us. Iranians and Afghans are here too, a tiny baby girl whose mother could barely feed her. All of them had gone to Calais, found it full, and had retreated back into the middle of nowhere with absolutely no idea what to do next. Not to put too fine a point on it, these unaccompanied Syrian teenage boys, this Iranian family with a 10-month-old infant girl, find themselves living in a ditch in northern France because the British government doesn't want to let them in. The problem in Britain at the moment is the distinction is increasingly being lost between illegal economic migrants and asylum seekers genuinely in need of refuge. People who work with refugees told us no matter how much they warn them, they still see the UK as a sort of promised land. What they don't realise is how much has changed politically towards even those who surely deserve support. These protesters may well argue that there are only 80 Syrians in Calais, but despite offering humanitarian aid, the UK has so far given asylum to just 50 people from Syria.
It's the stigmatisation. In England, they don't see migrants as a source of enrichment for their country. There's too much fear.
So by comparison to life in the ditch, these sorts of conditions at a disused factory in Calais look pretty good, at least because it's dry. Lots of people here from Darfur. The tragedy, we were told, would never be repeated. But take a walk through the maze of this building and it's hard to see what they have to show from their dream of a better existence.
There is no security stable there, and all the people that are escaping to find the suitable place to stay and looking for the protection from the death.
The only conclusion you can draw is that even though the UK is making the ability to move harder and harder, people won't stop trying to find a better life. Perhaps when they sleep, they dream of nothing, which after all is exactly what they have. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera, in northern France.
A video released by ISIL fighters purportedly showing them burning their French passports has provoked much discussion in the French media. Yesterday, French authorities named a second Frenchman in a video showing the killing of Syrian prisoners as 22-year-old Michael dos Santos. Jean-Charles Brissard, a specialist in terrorism, says he's a convert. We know that he's been in that area for a long time, for a year and a half, since August 2013. He learned how to use weapons, he became ultra-radical, and we know that he's extremely violent. We can see that through what he posts on the social networks. He mentions the threat of terror attacks against France, he calls for jihad, and he mentions Mohamed Merah's name. Dos Santos, who was of Portuguese origin but born in France, was a recent convert to Islam. In the Paris suburb where he lived, locals said they were shocked. I never imagined he would be capable of doing things like that. For us, he's a murderer because that's not Islam. Islam is peace. The French president has called for families to be given more information about the danger of jihadist websites and urged them to be vigilant in stopping young people from being recruited.
A demonstration of power by ISIS-aligned militants in Egypt's northern Sinai. This video posted on social media shows Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, or ABM's, attacks growing more sophisticated, highlighting firefights with security forces, drive-by shootings, and suicide bombings. ABM has slaughtered hundreds of police officers and soldiers since 2013. One of their more recent and brazen attacks killed at least 30 soldiers. In the aftermath, militants looted weapons and killed survivors. Among the dead, an ABM militant proclaims, "Tell the leader of ISIS al-Baghdadi, the leader of the faithful, that you are coming here and we are your soldiers." An ominous warning fresh off ABM's pledge of allegiance to ISIS, in which they changed their name to the State of Sinai. H.A. Hellier monitors the group's activities.
First thing it means is that any Egyptians who are currently fighting with ISIS and Daesh in Syria or Iraq now have a second arena that they can go and fight in without actually leaving the group. And they will add that expertise, they will add that training to the capacity of ABM, of Ansar Beit al-Maqdis within Sinai.
ABM justifies their attacks, pointing to government abuses like this video, which allegedly shows Egyptian soldiers torturing two Sinai Bedouins. Showing off captured weapons, ABM's presumed leader, his face hidden by the group, warns, "We told you before, the war hasn't started yet, and what's coming is worse and bitter. This is only the beginning. You opened a door you won't be able to close." Even Cairo hasn't been spared ABM's reach, but despite the brutality until now, they've almost exclusively targeted the government. In yet another video, ABM allegedly beheads these civilians they accused of spying for Israel. In a war conducted over social media, Egypt's military fired back, releasing a video that shows troops armed and ready, along with successful Sinai operations. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi supports the global war against ISIS, and at home he remains resolute, saying, "They assume that we are incapable of confronting them. They started the fire. We were very careful that no blood is shed. But unfortunately, they wanted the exact opposite." President Sisi pledges to defeat the Sinai militants. ABM has a pledge too, to eliminate borders, passports, visas, and to expand their corner of ISIS caliphate beyond Sinai. Ian Lee, CNN, Cairo.